Good morning. Hope you're all fine this morning. Um, During this webinar, I'm gonna discuss a little bit how to work with Pyramix in multitrack. Before that, again, the audio wasn't loud enough on the other webinars. I hope it is better now. In case there's some issues, do not hesitate to send a message. And generally speaking, if you have any question or topic I may have forgotten or I pass over too fast, do not hesitate to write a little message, and I will take it into account if possible. And if I read it as well, but I'm checking it out sometimes. Good. So now the idea here with this multi-track webinar is that many people are using Pyramix to record orchestral material or live material or whatever it is, and looking at it first of all, where to record, how to record, which formats to record, and then multiple ways of recording. It means, for example, background recording, or two different media material in two different locations, so that the producer could go away with it at the end of the session, for example, or simply for redundancy or backup possibilities. And this is one way to look at it. The other thing is that we have break markers, what we call media markers in Pyramix, how to, first of all, increment them, implement them, manage them, and use them afterwards. We're going to look also at some very basically editing, but for more editing, you might link to other videos that are available. And I mean, more in detail editing. And then finally, how to export it, because you might record with the system, but then to have to provide it to whoever, somebody else, generic file formats, or to export from a multi-track, just the two last tracks as a guide track. For example, if it's a broadcast recording, 64 tracks or 48 or whatever it is, track 63 and 64 will be the final pre-mix or even the final mix if it's sufficiently well done that it will be distributed. For example, how do I quickly can export those things from my material. Okay, let's start. So first of all, I have my mixer, and I'm briefly gonna explain my my setup here. So I have a 48 track project. And I'm going to right click on the track arming. If I left click, obviously I can enable my track to record, and if I right click, I open my record tab here straight away. So I will record into this folder. For the moment, I can, of course, with these three little dots, record into another folder that I create here. Basically my target destination. And then this is the file format I will record, for the moment in PMF, but I could record in all these different type of file formats. I record in 24-bit for the moment. I could record in 16 and 32 if I wish so. And then here are a few things that are kind of important. First of all, if I record in one file per track or not. So obviously I'm working by default and by definition in interleaved file format, because it's easier for my system to manage, easier for my drives and so on, especially if I work in a high track count. Here I'm in 48K, but I could do that in 192. But for compatibility reason with elder systems, for example, from other DAWs, I could use one file per track if needed. And then I could also prefix the track name if I would do that within or embed those in those files. Sorry, I just noticed I forgot to diminish my window of my camera, and I'm gonna start all of this again. Sorry about that. There we go. So I go back quickly to this window. I have here my different folders where I can record this, and then I can, those three little dots where I can set up a new target, basically set up a new destination folder, and then the file format. You see all kind of common file formats are available, and then the resolution, as I said, and here this was the one file per track, and the prefix with track name suffix with strip name that I'm recording. So it will implement the name of it, but it will then oblige me to do one file per track, and I would lose performances of my system, specifically if I work on a laptop and things like that, with high track count numbers. And then down here, a few things: prompt for name after each recording. There's a little pop-up box coming up after the recording telling me or asking me what is the name of your take, which can be very nice sometimes, but very annoying also, depending on the way you work. So this is where you can enable or disable it and suit best your workflow. Good. I'm going to close this and now come to my mixer. And here I have I made it very basic. I have 48 mono tracks, and I created on the output here a generator that I will enable in a second. But first of all, I just want to explain you the in and the outputs. So this is my physical input here, where I created for this purpose an internal bus between my output and my input, so I can listen to my incoming signal. There we go. And I will do that. I will show that in a second afterwards. And here I have a direct out, so that I can, for those working with a console or a physical device, you can directly connect then your output there. So we have, you can do it one by one, of course, but we have in our mixer a nice little tab called route, where obviously you can then connect directly your inputs. Go direct outs. I only have two now because I physically only have two outputs because of my webinar configuration, and my physical outputs the same thing. But if you would have a console in an output via IP or MADI or whatever it is, you just connect them straight through, and this works nicely and properly. Then you see there's another tab between the route and the mix called configure. And this configure tab, where you can move things around, create new strips, buses, and all of that. What is interesting for me here is down here. This is where you enable or you disable the direct out. So basically, if I select channel from 1 to 8, and then I click shift from 1 to 8, and then I shift control down there, I can, 1 to 8, and I then shift 1 down there, is that where I can connect them, select them all on or off in one go. It's where you can do that for the entire mixer, for example, if you want to do that. Good. Previous mixer setup, yes. There we go. So I don't need to change it. Whoops. No, it will make that long. Yes. There we go. So we're back again. Good. Now what I'm doing is that I will now enable my, yes, one last thing is that just above the direct out, you can also, of course, select it pre or post failure in case you have to provide a mix for a broadcast or an environment, and you have to record it differently to your console or whatever, that obviously you can change the pre and the post by direct out output. And then the classic thing in the Pyramix, I put a purple color on my stereo output, and here for the moment all my different 48 mono channels are going into my purple mix, because that's how I want to work, but I can disable them, of course, if I want to. And here typically track 47, 48, which could be my summing mix returning from my console, I could, for example, disable them because I want to provide another mix, which is my own mix on my purple bus. But this is, of course, each time dependent, the workflow. Good. Just above, I have the delay. So for the moment in samples, the physical delay, in case I want to delay, some physically in the audio, some microphones, for example, that are further away, and so on and so on. Good. Now I will track enable my first track, and I see I have my input coming in. And of course, if I press shift and I do it on all the tracks, it will connect them all together. And I will generate my little signal. There we go. So we see something move. I can close this mixer. And now I'm gonna explain you how I can record and how I can analyze the signal. Before recording, I close the mixer on purpose because I don't want to have it in front of my eyes all the time. So I could minimize it, like here. So I still see, yeah, it opens into my other screen, so I have to bring it back there. So I can still see what's going on in here, but I'm not such a fan of this minimize. I prefer closing it, and then I open here something called the meter bridge. And the meter bridge is something great because you can scale it the way you want. You can put enormous meters or some slower meters, some smaller meters, sorry, and then you can configure them clicking there on those two arrows. If you have many tracks, you can, for example, pile them up by 24 tracks each time, or 48, or whatever it is, fill it up your second screen, and then if you want to see the buses or the strips, if you want to see only the peak or peak and RMS, and how big you want them, so it means that you could scale them up and down, and you can really configure them to the type of recording you want to do. And then you have the settings. So in terms of colors, where you want to turn red, either -3 or -12, whatever the way you want to work. So you can configure them, and you have them always here somewhere while you record. And then, of course, I start the recording. So for the moment, I'm going to start it very basic, in the sense I'm going to press record here, down there. Of course, I could do it with a shortcut, and I'm recording something. And I'm going to stop it straight away. There we go. And you remember in my recording settings, this is where I can enable or disable to show me this little box and say, yeah, that's a good take. And I say, okay, if I'm annoyed by this box, I can disable it. You know it where now. More interestingly, what I want to show you now is that how I go to something a little bit more elaborate. And I'm going to open something called here the take logger. And the take logger is basically something that I can enable and disable that I always have in front of me. First of all, start recording. So basically it's the same button. I can use a shortcut as well. But now I could say, oops, there is a false start. Okay, false start. And I see now here in my, when I zoom a little bit in my Roger Take 4, I have an FS tag or flag called FS for false start. So I know that there was a false start, and that will, this media marker will remember all the time. You will see that in a second. So if I say now stop recording, it will show it here that there is this false start, and it will remember it very clearly. So I just remove it back there. And when I start recording again, I can say also there's a false start, and actually finally it's a bad take. So the bad take is about keeping my recording, so I can always go back to it if needed, but it just puts it to me in another color so that I recognize it. Oh, actually it's a bad take. But in a second it will name it also with, prefix it with a bad take. Let me just close this so we have a bit more space on my screen. And now it becomes very interesting. When I start the recording, actually the producer or myself, or for whatever reason, tells me actually it's not Roger Take 5 anymore. I forgot to rename it. It's now Clara. And it's not Take 5, but it's Take 10. Okay, so I can change it within recording at each time. There's another little tool that some people like, because you can have just underneath the take logger something called the recording stylus, and it's opening on the other screen, but I'm just going to bring it over to you and make it a bit smaller. There we go. And this obviously can be huge. It can be very big for the producer because they never remember where we are, and they say they know the take name. And while you're changing it here, it changes on the real time there, and it gives you always the length of it. Good. That's now my Clara take, my blah blah take 11. Now even further, I start recording again, and now I'm going to use those little emojis down here. So first of all, and this is the interesting thing, I can open this And you remember, as for the false start, let me implement the false start. I see now FS false start. Okay. And if I click those, I can say, oh, actually, that was a good solo. And why not here pitch? And then chair noise or whatever. So those remarks in my media are what we call media markers. Of course, I did it with the mouse. I can make my own type of sets with keyboard shortcuts and even custom colors and that. Now the thing is that what is very interesting, I see in the timeline here how those media markers behave. So when I declip my clip or my timeline, basically, I just see those colors. So it's very quickly to edit. This is the portion I want. Or if I click on it simply, it will constantly show my media markers each time present on the camera. So that is a very quick way to get to the right, or to get to the moments you want to remove, or to the moments you want to keep, depending which way you look at it. Let me just disable the track, the recording, and let me move to the media manager here. Now we did those few recordings in this folder. You remember, this is blah blah take 1. So this is my media manager for those who don't know it. This is where all my raw material behaves for the moment in this folder. I could have it in different folders if I want to or need to. And I see this is this take with the full start. And this is now my Roger take 1. This is my blah blah take 10 and 11 with all the different markers. And those markers here I can take an in and an out and just bring in this part, because this is my interest, and assemble my different takes like this. So this trimmer here with the functionalities there of what you want to see, how you want to see it, this is basically a rough editor, a rough cut, and then you bring in what you want to for the fine editing when you need to go further. Good. Now let me bring you a little bit, sorry, one thing I wanted to tell you before, which is, I think, important for those who work with timecode. I have down here my chase button. So this means that I would now, it's at 0, but I would now having some incoming timecode. For example, if I would work with some television TV, video TV, to be able to work with that together. Now the thing is that I would here go into my chase mode, and I would set it up there, and this is an important part. So I go into old settings that you just saw up there. I'm just going to cover this so that you don't get confused, and I'm going to go into one tab here called jog and chase, and this part is very important, chase settings. So I have 4 possibilities of chase modes, so to say. The first one is not to chase, even if I receive some timecode. Hard chase, so basically it will really chase straight away to the incoming timecode. As soon as I have one problematic in terms of disruption of the LTC, for example, I will stop. Okay, so this is in a safe environment where I really want to make sure that I'm connected to it. But in a live environment, I rather would go to soft chase, so that it has a certain tolerance in case it moves the timecode, or it's above timecode with some disruptions in it. And obviously various speed in terms of chase. This is for archiving, restoration type of work. And then I have a few settings, so the stabilizing and so on. And this is the most important, stay and record until stop pressed. So it means that if I receive a timecode, and this timecode comes to my signal, and I chase it, then if this signal disappears, I continue recording until myself I press the stop of this take or the recording. So this is crucial in live environments or rehearsal environments. For example, if when I want to record, I want to stay in recording despite, for example, the non-existence anymore of the timecode, because the crew of the TV set, for example, the TV truck, sorry, have closed their truck and went for lunch or whatever it is. And then allow chasing across midnight. This is not so much anymore in use, but still for operas and things like that, there are still some systems that won't allow to go over the 23, 59, and so on. So you can enable it or disable it in that aspect and go over 24 hours basically. Good. And then once you set up, you press chase down here and you go for a chase. Or you open your transport bar and you do it in your transport bar over here with the LTC reader. Okay, and this is here where you can choose the source you want to connect to. Opening this transport bar brings me down here to, I have a recorder 1. What we've done until now is actually to record something in multitrack straight away in Pyramix. Okay, now I want to go a bit further, and it's to record in batch so that I can make some background recording while I'm doing something else, or some background recording while I'm editing the recording, or some background recording in 2 different locations because I want to create 2 media sets at the same time. One on my internal drive, for example, and another one on a server or on an external USB drive so that the producer can go away with it. Good. So now I will do that here and explain it briefly. Let me close this for the moment and I keep this open and I go back to my settings, and this time I go into background recorder, which is down here. So first of all, you can decide how many background recorders you want to set up. Most of the time it's 1, but for typically archive people who ingest loads of analog or digital tape material, they will have to do it in real time. So this is why you can have several recorders and do several batch recordings simultaneously. Of course, if you don't want, I mean, you can then select also the ones you want to listen to, but depending the type of criteria you have in terms of needing to listen to everything you ingest or not. So this is my set for the recorder 1, obviously. First of all, I chose the green color, but you choose whatever you want. The timestamp, either at 0 or the time of the day, so or the incoming time code if there's anything. And then I can set up some pre-buffering. So before I press record, it will record in this case 30 seconds or 60 seconds. So I have some time that I can stretch back. Confirm stop, good. And this is now the take name I will give, batch recording take 2 or take 1 or whatever. And this is here where you set up the media sets. So for the moment, I will create 2 media sets for this recording simultaneously. And this is the settings for my media set 1. So I will record in this folder. I see it up there as well in my media manager. But of course I could record somewhere else and set up something new into my computer wherever I want. And I will record in broadcast wave for the moment. 24-bit, single media, or 1 file per track if needed, single media for the moment. And down here I say edit while recording, or no, or edit at the end of the recording. So if I say no, it will just record in the background. If I say edit while recording, that's what we're going to see now. And edit at the end of recording, so it's recording in the background. But if I say stop recording, it will then automatically put the recording mode, a clip, into my timeline at the proper timestamp. Good. Edit while recording. And then this is the media set number 2. So you remember I record into the F drive record 2 folder. And now I will record in the D drive in this folder, BWAV as well. And let's go. I say OK. And this is now my recorder that I can enable here. So one little thing still there on the left, this is the mixer. I have, of course, a different mixer for my background recorder than my project, because my background recorder could be 2 tracks and my project's 48 tracks, or it could be the opposite, or the same, but I can, how can I say, manage 2 independent incoming signals at the same time. Same thing as the other mixer that we've seen just before with my physical inputs and so on. I created a generator in that case as well, just to have some signal. And here, the amount of tracks I enabled. So I can, of course, just record 8 tracks or 7 tracks or 5 tracks or whatever I want. So for the moment, I record here 8 tracks. I close this and I go record. And now this brings me to the time of the day, 9:25, my European time, and I see the record is progressing here. And I can, of course, make a record, make a fade, take a bit of it, move it there, make another fade, and take something there and add it, make it crossover. So this is editing while recording, and I can play back here and listen to what I just recorded while it continues recording. And of course, if I want, I can select this project, mix down, and export it as a quick mix, for example, if there is a requirement for a radio show or a concert, an event or something that needs to be aired straight away. Now, I could use also the take logger well before, and you will understand now that before I was in the active project, and now I'm on the record one. And here I can now put my markers in, as I've seen before. Let me zoom out a little bit so that we see those markers. And I can take my notes as I did it before with the active project and stop the recording. And of course, change the take and everything. And now I stop the recording and it becomes like a very standard clip, like all the others. But the interesting thing is that if I go check in my 2 folders, I see that there is batch recording take 001 with 2 markers. And if I go into record 2 in the other drive, the same file behaves here. So let me start again and show it to you. So while I'm recording here, my take 2, it's recording it at the same time in the other folder. So at the end of the recording, I repeat it, I just take my final recording, my external drive, for example, and I hand it over to the producer, or simply I have a redundancy of my medias in case one fails or one drive crashes. So this is an amazing feature and a very important feature about this to be able to use that. Good. What I will do now is to import some existing audio material, and there I can show you how this works. So let me open that. Let's have a clean timeline again, and I'm gonna go to this project, and I have here 2 long takes, more than 1 hour, in 48 tracks. So again, I can double click in here and listen what's in there. Let me do one thing also. Enable this and to enable the monitoring section. There we go, the monitoring, so we'll hear something from this material. I preserved the audio, your ears, with the white noise or pink noise we had just until now. So Control and Shift for the in and the out point, and I can drag this material into my timeline if I want to, or I can spot it, of course, if I prefer so. Yeah, sorry, it's a bit heavy sometimes because I'm broadcasting from the same laptop as I'm doing this. That should be fine. So I see everything has been placed in here. I can also just take this part and do like this. And if I right click, this is another way. I can do it with 1 clip or with several clips. And I can say place, for example. If I put my marker here, I can say then place, spot this part to the marker or to the original time code. So place, append to cursor, for example, or place at original time code. So if I append to cursor, it's just going to bang it right in there. And yes, I should have just done it on the first track. This is my mistake. So I move down. So on the first track, and right click, and then place it to this time there. There we go. And now, of course, these are two different clips that I can move the way I want it independently. Quickly about fade editor. My fade editor now, I'm showing one fade in here. If I want to see more, sorry, one track of the fade. If I want to see more, for example, of the 8 tracks, I can move them here. And now I can move my crossfade the way I need, the way I want about this cut that I'm just doing. Good. I'm going to import another song because they might have been 2 recordings, or let's say 2 songs. Let me take this part here and let's move this one over there. So place, append, great. And now let's say that I have those 2 recordings that I need to manage and to export. So that means that, first of all, I have, of course, several ways of managing and exporting it. So I'm playing that back, open my mixer, and I can, of course, mix.
Or on the smoky altar floods of wine, in honor of the smiling ladies, fair Flora and the ship queen. We know sun and we know love,
anyway. So I have now these 2 takes, and of course, first of all, I could just select my take 1 and go project, and mix down, and I will bounce now, for example, my first recording or my first song or the first part of what I need into a new file, format, via my bus, my stereo bus, and export it. I could change the sample rate and so on. And then I would do the same with the second one. But now the thing, what is important, is that I might need not to mix down it, but to export this in multitrack. So it means that I would need to export this in multitrack in different formats and with an edit in the middle. So I will take my first one and I made this cut in there and I will create a group out of that. You will understand that in a second. So that when I click on it, it behaves like a group and it's not anymore 2 takes. And this is now my second one. So, and I will rename them also. So I go to my selection and I call this song 1 and I call this song 2. There we go. You will understand this in a second why. So this is now my song 1 and this is now my song 2. I see it, sorry, on the top there where I just made it. Go back to my media manager, and now I can select all of those guys. Project, render. I could apply an effect to it if I would need to, but I don't want in this very case. And then I can say here prefix with track name, for example. So my track name for the moment is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, but I could name it piano left, piano right, whatever, a dark microphone, guitar one, or whatever it is. But if I say that, it will then oblige me to do it 1 file per track. But this is perhaps what I want. And so I will this time create 48 files in this audio format, but it could be BUAV, it could be AIFF, or whatever it is. In 24-bit, yes, 1 file per track, as I just said. Unique file name extension is in case there would be several files having the same name, so that they in the same folder, so that they don't get messed up. But I'm exporting it, and I know that each file will have a different name because of the track number, for example, so I'm fine with it. And then here I can make the whole composition. If I click whole composition, it will make a unique file, 1 file per track, but the unique length of the 2 songs, which I don't want in this case. What I want is to say the selection, yes, your selection split by group. So now I will make 1 file for song 1, and one file for song 2, 48 times for each track. Okay, and then I could say also different values between marks and so on. So if I click now render, I will make 48 files, 2 times, one for song 1 and one for song 2 in the location. Now the interesting thing, I could say, well, this is now one way of exporting. The other way of exporting is that while I'm recording, I might have, with a console now, I might have recorded on the 2 last tracks. So this is a mess. I'm just going to delete it. It was my mistake before. On the 2 last tracks, track 47 and 48, or 63 and 64, or 107, 127 and 28, and so on, depending on how many tracks you're recording. This is now the recording of the return of my console, of which I made my mix that we aired, for example. And this will become either my final work, because it's good, or a form of a guide track, for example, to move it on to the video people for the editing, and then I take it back and I can reconform my multitrack so that I do then the final mix. To do that, to be able to export those 2 tracks here, of course I could do a mix down, but I want to go a bit faster. So what I'm doing is that I make a selection like this. While pressing enter, I automatically put markers on the left and the right of this very selection. And that means that I will be able to now make a selection precisely on that. So if I right click on a track, for example, I can say select all clip between marks. And now, because they are grouped together, it selects them all through my whole timeline. But what I want is to bring it down a little bit and move it down point to point. Well, I could have made it smaller in terms of the tracks, but let's do it like this. Until my track 47 and 48, I can do it with shortcuts also. Oops, I went one too far. And now I have my 2 tracks, 47 and 48, selected like this, without the others being selected. And I say project, render. And now I say, yes, I want to do it export final, but I don't want to make it 1 file per track because it's a master file. And I do it in wave, yes. Split by groups, that sounds good. Render. Sorry, I know what I did. I did a mistake because it did it now the whole way through, and this is not what I want to do. What I want to do is not split by group. I want to make it selection. Exactly, sorry. There we go, render. And now it's rendering just this file into a new file. And I see it here. I don't know where I put it. Extra final, sorry. This is now my stereo file of my concert that I can hand over to the video people or to the producer or whoever it is as a guide track or a master track for the editing. Later on then, when this file comes back with the video, if in case I work with video, I then can relink it to my original media, to new media, by using the different cuts so that you reopen everything with the multitrack if more mixing or editing needs to be done. The other way of exporting is going back to my recorder 2, where I have those 8 tracks or 48 tracks. I mean, it doesn't matter, I can go here, I have more 48 tracks. But here I can, this time, if I don't need to put any editing inside or any modifying or just extracting a few tracks for it, I can always say here, quick export. So now you remember we recorded some BWAV files. I say quick export, and I decide where I want to put it. So I put this folder, for example. And now I can say I want to export it in all these different file formats. For example, in AIFF, one file per track or not, flatten track numbers, unique file name extension, and generate new UID. The flattened track numbers, this is very interesting and important, is that in some typically broadcast wave files, you have some metadata that allows you, when you do recording and you do some re-recording, let's say we recorded the orchestra in 48 tracks, and the next day we just record some soloists on 8 tracks, the whole and their microphone. But this is not track 1. It's track 7 and 8, and perhaps 15, 16, 17 and 1. So different ways around. So basically then the metadata would remember where those tracks have been placed. Some devices, some DAWs, some video editing devices don't understand this metadata. So this is why you can then flatten the track numbers so that those 8 tracks will be from track 1 to 8 and not anymore 7 and 8 and 15, 16, 17 and so on. But it's an interesting feature if you remain in Pyramix so that you drag and drop your files straight away. You see now I have track here from 1 to 48, but if I now record just track 33, 36 and 37 and I make a quick insert like this. Show that again. Flatten track numbers is activated here, and if I go back there and I record it over,